I never thought a knock on my hostel door would change anything, and yet, when Mason walked in that night, looking for a phone charger, something in the air between us shifted, subtle but undeniable. My name's Aiden. I'm 21, an English lit major with a growing obsession for indie films and a playlist that ranges from lo-fi to heartbreak. Ballads I never admit I listen to. I keep to myself, mostly quiet by nature, observant, always watching from the edges while pretending I'm not feeling everything too deeply, especially when it comes to Mason. Mason's my roommate, or technically, my ex-roommate. We shared a dorm in our first year before I got moved to another block when renovations started, but we still hang out almost every day. We're part of the same friend circle. He's the guy who lights up a room without even trying, the guy who laughs too loud, calls everyone bro, and somehow manages to make even cafeteria coffee seem like the best drink in the world if he's holding it. He doesn't know I'm into guys. Or maybe he does, and he just never brings it up. Either way, I never told him. I've kept it tucked deep inside me, the way you hide a letter you're not brave enough to send. Mason's always been cool, but he's also always straight, at least, as far as I know. And that's the line I've never dared to cross, no matter how many times I've caught myself staring when he changed his shirt or leaned too close while showing me a dumb meme that night. The hostel was quiet. Most of the guys had gone home for the weekend or were out watching a late-night game. I stayed back. I told myself it was because I needed to finish my assignment, but really, I just liked the peace. The hum of the ceiling fan, the faint buzz of the vending machine down the hall, the feeling of not needing to perform for anyone. I was halfway through watching Before Sunrise for the fourth time when there was a knock on my door. Raps like always, Mason's signature. I paused the movie and sat up, brushing off crumbs from my lap. Yo, Aiden, he called through the door. You got a charger in there? Mine's officially dead, and I'm dying. When I opened the door, there he was, black gym shorts, red sleeveless shirt, clinging slightly to his skin from whatever late-night workout he'd just finished. His hair was damp, curling slightly at the ends. I could smell the faint scent of his cologne, something crisp and clean like cedar and soap. Sure, I muttered, turning to grab the charger from my desk, hoping my voice didn't betray how fast my heart was beating. He walked in without waiting for an invitation, flopping down on my bed like it was still his room, like nothing had changed. You watching another sad, artsy film? He teased, squinting at the paused screen. You really do have a type, man, in movies and otherwise. I froze for a beat at the word otherwise. Did he mean anything by that? Probably not. Mason joked like that all the time without thinking, without knowing what it did to me. But when I handed him the charger, our fingers brushed, just for a second, and he didn't pull away. That's when I knew this night wasn't going to be like the others. Something was different. Maybe it was just me, finally seeing him not just as my friend, but as something more. Or maybe, deep down, he felt it too. Either way, the quiet between us suddenly didn't feel so quiet anymore. ***, Mason and I met the first day of freshman orientation, thrown together by some random housing algorithm that didn't know how painfully different we were. He walked into our dorm wearing a tank top, flip-flops and sunglasses even though it was raining. He had 2 duffel bags slung over his shoulder and a box of protein powder tucked under one arm. Meanwhile, I was unpacking alphabetized book, its spines quietly panicking over whether the mini fridge should go near the window or not. I still remember the way he grinned and said, "Roomie, which side do you want?" Actually, never mind. I already called dibs on the one near the outlet. He was the kind of guy who could claim space without making you feel like you'd lost it. We were an odd match, but somehow, it worked. He brought the noise, I brought the quiet. He made me laugh when I was overthinking, and I reminded him to breathe when he was sprinting through life. We weren't just living together, we were building something quietly dependable, like a routine neither of us admitted we needed. Over time, we built our own language of inside jokes. I'd call him Shakespeare every time he misspelled definitely, and he'd call me professor whenever I corrected his grammar. He had this way of pretending to be annoyed, but his eyes would crinkle when he laughed, and I'd catch myself watching them a second too long. We once pulled an all-nighter to cram for finals, sitting on the floor surrounded by coffee cups and flashcards. Around 4 a.m., he leaned back against the closet door and said, "Dude, if I fail this, I'm blaming you and your stupid flashcard font." "Comic Sans improves retention," I said flatly, which made him laugh so hard he snorted. He never let me live that down. After our first year, when I got moved to the other building, I thought things might change, but they didn't. We still had late-night walks to the vending machine, still played Mario Kart in the common room until someone kicked us out, Still texted about everything from cafeteria food to the weird dreams he had after eating too many gummies. I never told him how those things meant more to me than I could explain. How every little interaction felt like a thread stitching me closer to him. One weekend, our friend group planned a spontaneous trip to the lakeside just outside the city. It was meant to be a casual escape, sleeping bags, barbecue, a little hiking. Mason was in charge of logistics, which meant he forgot the tent. Classic. By the time we got there, the sun was already dipping below the hills, and we realized we were one sleeping bag short. Of course, I'll take the back seat of the car, I volunteered quickly. Mason raised an eyebrow. You'll freeze in there. We'll just share. Don't be weird about it. I tried to laugh it off, but something fluttered in my chest. I'm not weird, I said. You're the one who hogs the covers. He smirked. Fine. I'll only take 90%. That night, we lay side by side under the stars in one shared sleeping bag, zipped halfway. The fire had gone out, and the chill had started to creep in. I could feel the rise and fall of his breath beside me. Every so often, our shoulders would touch. I stared up at the dark sky, listening to the crickets and the occasional crack of a twig in the woods. You ever think about how weird life is? He asked, voice soft and unguarded. Pretty much all the time, I whispered back. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm glad we met. You know, you make the weird stuff feel normal. I turned my head slightly to look at him. His profile was lit faintly by the moonlight's sharp jaw, tired eyes, lips slightly parted. He didn't say it like a joke. It wasn't a line. I wanted to say something back, anything that might reveal what I was feeling, but the words got stuck somewhere behind my ribs. Instead, I just murmured, same. He turned his head to eyes meeting mine. We held the gaze, a second longer than we ever had before. My heart thudded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Then he smiled, and that tiny movement shattered me in the gentlest way. The next morning, nothing was said about the sleeping bag. He teased me for snoring, which I didn't, and I accused him of drooling on my hoodie. It was like we had pressed pause on something and didn't know how to unfreeze it. But I started noticing the little things more, like the way he always leaned just a little closer when we were watching a video on my laptop, even when there was plenty of space. Or how he started wearing cologne more often when we hung out, something subtle, musky, something that lingered after he left. Or how he looked at me during silences, like he was about to say something but changed his mind. Sometimes, I wondered if I was imagining it all, if my feelings were warping reality. But then he'd do something like brush his hand against mine and not move it right away, and I'd wonder all over again if maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in this, and that quiet hope, the maybe of it all, was enough to keep me holding on. A week after the lakeside trip, the campus maintenance team decided our hostile building needed emergency plumbing repairs. Half the rooms on my floor, including mine, had to be vacated overnight. We were told to find alternate sleeping arrangements. Just like that. No apologies, no offers of help. I sat on my bed, packing my charger and headphones, dreading the idea of crashing in the rec room or on one of the stiff fake leather couches in the common lounge. That's when I got Mason's text. Yo, you can crash in my room tonight. I'll be out late, but I left the key with Raj. I stared at the message longer than I should have, chewing the inside of my cheek. I hadn't been in Mason's room, his current room, since he moved out of ours last semester. He shared it with a new guy, but his roommate had gone home for the week. Just me and Mason, one room, one bed. I typed back, thanks, are you sure? His reply came instantly. Of course, man, you're always welcome. That word always, heavily in my chest. By the time I let myself in that night, the sky was dark and the hallway nearly silent. His room smelled faintly like sandalwood, and something sharper, maybe the detergent he used. The sheets on the bed were messy, a hoodie thrown over the desk chair. His desk lamp cast a warm, amber glow on the wall, giving the space a calm, lived-in feel. I set my bag down quietly, unsure if I should sit or wait or maybe just sleep on the floor like an idiot. I wasn't sure what the rules were anymore. Line I could step near without falling straight over it. When the door opened about an hour later, I was sitting on his bed in gym shorts and a loose t-shirt, pretending to scroll through my phone while trying not to inhale the scent of his pillow. Walked in with his gym bag slung over his shoulder, hair damp again, cheeks flushed from a late-night run. His eyes landed on me and he smiled, not surprised, not awkward, just warm. Hey, you comfy? I nodded. Yeah, thanks again. He dropped his bag and stretched, arms lifting his shirt just enough to show the faint line of his abs before it fell again. I looked away so fast I almost gave myself whiplash. You want me to sleep on the floor? He asked casually, already pulling out a spare blanket. No, I said too quickly. I mean, it's your bed. I'm the guest. I'll sleep on the floor. He gave me a look, amused. Aiden, it's not that deep. It's just a bed. We've shared before. Not when we were alone. Not in this room. This late. This close. Still, I didn't argue. A few minutes later, we were lying side by side, the blanket between us. Mason's arm accidentally brushed mine as he reached to plug in his phone, and I swear my body went rigid for half a second. He didn't seem to notice. You still watching sad movies? He asked, facing the ceiling. Sometimes, not tonight. Could I need a break from tragic love stories? He said it like a joke, but something in his tone felt thoughtful. A silence followed, not uncomfortable, but full of energy, like static, waiting for the moment to spark. You ever think, I said slowly, how weird it is that some people just get to know who they want, what they feel? He didn't answer immediately. Yeah, I guess I never thought much about it. I've always liked girls, so I just assumed that was it. But I don't know. Lately, it's all felt a little more, I don't know, gray. My breath caught gray. He turned his head, facing me now. His eyes were shadowed by the dim light, but I could still see the tension in his jaw. Yeah, like ... maybe the lines aren't as solid as we think. Maybe it's not just about labels. My chest felt like it was caving in and expanding all at once. I tried to keep my voice casual. And what do you feel now? His eyes held mine for too long, honestly. I don't know. But being around you, it's made me think about things I never did before. My throat tightened. He reached up and rubbed the back of his neck, nervous. That probably sounds weird, right? No, I said quietly. Not weird at all. Another silence stretched between us, but this one buzzed. I could hear the hum of the ceiling fan, the slow rhythm of his breathing, feel the faint heat radiating between our shoulders where they almost touched. Then, without warning, he shifted slightly toward me so our knees bumped under the blanket. Do you remember that night at the lake? He asked. I nodded. I couldn't sleep, he said, voice soft. I kept thinking, ... how nice it felt, just lying next to you. It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. I couldn't look at him, afraid I might burst. My heart was doing things it shouldn't be allowed to do in a friendship. I felt it too, I admitted, barely above a whisper. He was quiet for a beat. Then I felt it, his hand, tentative, resting lightly over mine beneath the blanket. Not gripping, just there. That small touch cracked something open in me, but I didn't move. I didn't dare. He shifted again, closer now. His knee brushed mine again, deliberately this time. I don't know what this is, he whispered, but it feels real. My breath trembled as I exhaled. It is. The space between us shrank with every second. My fingers curled slightly. Brushing his, he didn't pull away. His thumb ghosted over my knuckle. The touch was feather-light, but electric. My skin burned where he touched it. It wasn't a confession, not yet, but it was something, a prelude. And in that still room, in the silence of two boys trying to understand what their hearts were finally brave enough to whisper, something shifted between us. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was the kind of shift you feel in your bones, before your mind catches up. The kind that says, everything is about to change. I didn't sleep that night, not really. Mason's hand never left mine under the blanket. It just rested there, light and unsure, like he was waiting to see if I'd pull away. I didn't. I couldn't. My body was frozen in a kind of electric stillness, every breath shallow, my mind chasing every possible meaning behind that touch. He didn't say anything else, and I didn't either. We just lay there, breathing in sync, skin to skin through layers of fear and longing. By morning, our hands had drifted apart, but the weight of that silence hung in the air like mist that hadn't yet burned off. When I woke, he was already up, sitting at his desk in gym shorts, staring at his laptop screen like he wasn't really seeing it. He didn't say good morning, just glanced at me, and I glanced at him, and we both looked away. The whole day passed in a blur. We didn't talk about what happened, we didn't touch, we didn't even text, but something had changed. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, the kind of ache that comes from holding your breath too long. Later that week, the plumbing repairs were finally finished, and I moved back into my own room. Things between us didn't go back to normal. How could they? Something unspoken was now alive and breathing in every look we shared. A loaded silence had taken up residence in the spaces our laughter used to fill. I was afraid to bring it up, afraid that if I said too much, he'd retreat, that he'd tell me it was a mistake, that the touch, the closeness, the warmth of that night meant nothing to him, and that maybe I was just projecting everything I wanted onto someone who wasn't mine to want. I didn't know how to live in this in-between, friends, but not closer, but distant. The tipping point came the next weekend. It was late again, always late with us. I was alone in my room, scrolling through photos from our first. Yeah, there was one of us on the dorm rooftop, grinning with greasy pizza slices in our hands, the city lights glowing behind us. He had one arm thrown around me, pulling me in like he always did, like it meant nothing, but to me, it had always meant everything then. A knock. 3 soft raps. I opened the door. It was Mason. He looked nervous. Not his usual kind of nervous. He wore a faded black t-shirt and grey sweats. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets, shoulders tense. His hair was still damp from a shower. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey, can I come in?" I nodded, stepping aside. He walked in slowly, like the room felt smaller than it should have. His gaze scanned the space, the books, the mess of my sheets, the desk lamp still on. Then he turned to me. "I've been thinking about that night." I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure I could. He let out a breath. "I keep playing it over in my head. Not just the hand thing. Everything. The lake trip. The way you look at me sometimes. The way I look at you." I swallowed hard. My chest was tight. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted, stepping closer. "I don't have a script for this. I don't know if I'm saying the right thing, but I know I miss you when you're not around. I know I feel safer with you than anyone else. And I know that when I touched your hand that night, I didn't want to stop." My heart thundered. He looked down. "You probably think I'm just confused. Maybe I am. But I can't keep pretending that nothing happened. Because something did." I took a shaky breath. My throat felt like it was wrapped in barbed wire. "You don't have to explain it if you're not ready." He looked up then, eyes meeting mine, wide and unguarded. "I want to explain it. I just don't know how." I stepped closer, the space between us shrinking until I could see the freckle on his collarbone, the rise and fall of his chest. "You don't have to be perfect, Mason," I said. "You just have to be honest." He hesitated, then whispered, "I think I like you." The words came out raw, shaky, like they cost him something to say. I stared at him, every nerve on fire. "I don't know what that means yet," he continued, "but it's not just in my head. It's not just a phase or a moment. I think about you all the time, and I keep trying to tell myself it's just because we're close or because I miss the old days or health. I don't know, but then I see you and everything else just fades." I felt like I might cry. "Mason," I said softly, "I've liked you for so long, it scares me." His breath hitched. "I didn't want to ruin what we had," I said. "I didn't want to make you uncomfortable, but every time you looked at me a little too long, or brushed my shoulder like it didn't mean anything, I felt it, and I hated myself for hoping." He reached up then slowly, like he wasn't sure he was allowed, and cupped the side of my face. His thumb brushed just beneath my eye. "You don't have to hate yourself," he murmured. "Not for wanting something real." I leaned into his hand, eyes fluttering shut for a second. When I opened them, he was still there, still looking at me like I mattered. "Are you sure?" I whispered. "No," he said, voice cracking just slightly, "but I want to find out." That was all it took. I stepped forward. Our foreheads touched first, a soft bump that felt like the truest thing I'd ever known. My hands found his waist, hesitant at first, then firmer as he pulled me in, and there was no more space left between us. And then, we kissed. Not in some dramatic fireworks way. It wasn't perfect. It was uncertain and slow and full of everything we hadn't said until now. His lips were warm, slightly chapped. His hands trembled. Mine did too, but it was real. So incredibly real that when we pulled back, neither of us spoke for a moment. He kept his hands on my waist. I kept mine on his chest, feeling his heart racing against my palm. He looked at me, eyes full of something I hadn't seen in him before, vulnerability. "So what now?" he asked quietly. I smiled, not through confidence, but because I finally didn't feel alone in this anymore. "We keep figuring it out," I said. "Together." He exhaled, shoulders relaxing for the first time all night. And in that tiny room, filled with too many memories and the faint hum of my desk lamp, we stood, two boys in the middle of something new, something terrifying, something maybe neither of us had a name for yet, but we were no longer pretending, and that was enough. For the first few minutes after the kiss, we didn't move. We just stood there, breathing the same air, caught in that strange, fragile space where everything is new but already meaningful. Mason's thumb brushed the inside of my wrist as if he were memorizing the shape of me. I kept expecting the moment to snap some joke, some awkward laugh to break the tension, but it never came. Instead, he leaned his forehead against mine and whispered, "Okay, that happened." I let out a nervous chuckle. "Yeah, that really happened." He smiled, but his eyes stayed on mine softer now, unsure but open. I was scared you'd pull away. I was scared you'd regret it. He shook his head. I don't. I'm more terrified of pretending it didn't mean something. We ended up lying on my bed, fully clothed but tangled up in a way we'd never been before, my arm draped over his chest, his fingers laced with mine, resting on his stomach. The room felt warmer now, like something sacred had been spoken into the walls. Your heart's still racing, I said quietly, pressing my cheek against his shoulder. Yours isn't, he asked, glancing down with a playful smirk. I grinned. I didn't say that. His hand found mine again and squeezed gently. I've never done this before, he said after a pause. I know. He looked at me. Not just the kiss, I mean, felt this way, about a guy. I could see the vulnerability in his eyes, like he was searching for a way to explain something he didn't fully understand yet. I nodded. You don't have to have all the answers tonight, he sighed. I know, it's just I want to do this right. With you. I pulled our joined hands up and kissed the back of his knuckles. You already are. For a while, we just talked, really talked. Not about classes, or video games, or cafeteria food, but about us. About how long I'd liked him. About how long he'd wondered why he felt different around me but was too afraid to name it. You remember when we watched that terrible horror movie freshman year and I practically sat on top of you when I got scared? He asked. You did sit on top of me, I said with a laugh. He grinned. Yeah, well, I think part of me wanted to. I just didn't realize why. We laughed a lot that night, relieved laughter, the kind that spills out after carrying too much tension. It wasn't all perfect. There were still pauses, nervous glances, little stumbles over words we weren't used to saying out loud, but there was honesty, and that made everything easier to carry. At some point I teased, so what do I call you now? My straight roommate. With feelings, he snorted. That sounds like a bad indie band. How about just mine? His expression softened, and he turned toward me, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. Yeah, I like that better. Eventually, our conversation drifted to the harder stuff. What about people finding out? He asked. I mean, I'm not ready to tell everyone, I nodded. You don't have to. Not yet. Maybe not ever. We'll figure it out together. He stared at the ceiling for a moment, then said, but I do want people to know. One day, just at my pace. That's all I'd ever ask. He rolled onto his side, looking at me with a soft smile. You're kind of amazing, you know that. I rolled my eyes. Don't go getting all poetic on me now. You still eat cereal straight from the box. He laughed, that familiar warm sound I'd always loved, but now, it was different. Now it was ours. The lights stayed on all night. We didn't sleep much, just talked, held hands, dozed a little in between tangled limbs and quiet smiles. He kissed me again before sunrise, gentler this time, more certain. A slow press of lips that said, we're really doing this. And we were. We didn't define everything that night. We didn't map out our future or pretend we had all the answers. But we had us. We had the start of something real, and that was more than enough. A week later, Mason and I sat outside the campus coffee shop, sharing a muffin and a single set of earbuds like nothing had changed. Except everything had. It was early evening. The sky was painted in faint streaks of pink and gold, and the breeze carried the faint scent of cut grass and spring rain that had come earlier in the day. We were tucked into our usual corner on the concrete steps, knees brushing, bodies angled just slightly inward. Our shoulders touched as naturally as breath. Now, and neither of us pulled away. He nudged me with his elbow. You're gonna make fun of me, but I listened to that Phoebe Bridgers playlist you sent me. I blinked. You did. He gave a sheepish smile. Yeah. Motion sickness kinda hit. I laughed. Full and easy. You're officially broken, maybe, he said, but you broke me gently. There was that pause again, the kind that used to scare me, but now, it felt like space, like possibility. He glanced around, then slowly reached for my hand resting on my knee. His fingers laced through mine with quiet confidence. Not defiance, not rebellion, just care. He didn't look to see if anyone was watching. He just held on, and I didn't let go. Still scared? I asked, brushing my thumb across his knuckle. Yeah, he admitted, but less when I'm with you. We sat there in silence for a while, watching a group of freshmen stumble past, laughing too loudly. I remembered how we used to be them, how we'd once sat in this exact spot joking about crushes and bad cafeteria pasta. Now here we were, writing a whole new chapter neither of us had planned for. It's weird, he said after a while. I always thought relationships were supposed to start with certainty, like you just know. But with you, it didn't start with knowing. It started with not knowing, and still wanting to try. I looked at him, really looked. The fleck of amber in his eyes, the slightly crooked smile, the way he squinted into the sun even when wearing sunglasses on his head. All the things I'd memorized without ever realizing I had. Trying's more than enough, I said. He turned toward me. You think we'll still be sitting here in a year? I hope so. What about 5? I smiled. If we are, you're buying your own muffin, he laughed, leaning his head on my shoulder. I tilted mine to rest against his. The city moved around us, loud and unaware, but we were still steady. That night, back in his room, our room now, unofficially he pulled something out of his backpack. A photo strip from the dorm's old photo booth. Us from freshman year, Mason with his tongue out, me trying not to laugh. In the last frame, he had thrown his arm around me, planting a big, exaggerated kiss on my cheek. I remembered blushing so hard that day and brushing it off like a joke. He handed it to me. I found it last week. Thought you should have it. I took it carefully, my thumb ghosting over the faded paper. You sure? He shrugged. I already remember the real thing. I looked up at him, heartful in a way I hadn't known was possible. You're really doing this? He nodded. With you? Yeah. There was no grand declaration, no need for it. Just a quiet agreement between two people who had taken the long way toward each other, and finally arrived. Before we turned off the lights, he reached over and flicked the switch on his nightstand lamp. But he paused, then turned it back on. I want to see you, he said softly. I smiled and leaned in, brushing my nose against his. You always could. We lay there, facing each other in the soft glow. His fingers traced lazy patterns along my wrist. My hand rested over his heart. We talked about everything and nothing, about what we'd do over summer break, about which of our friends might suspect something, about whether or not we'd ever tell his parents. But mostly, we talked like we always had, like best friends. Only now every word meant more. At some point I dozed off with my head tucked beneath his chin. When I woke, he was already watching me. What? I murmured. He brushed a strand of hair from my forehead and whispered, just making sure this is real. It is real. It is. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid.